morning, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I will be moderating today's panel for the Government of Alberta's Employment First initiative. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Employment First webcast. It's part of a monthly series of webcasts on employment for persons with disabilities. These webcasts are part of the larger joint initiative by the Government of Alberta called the Human Services Learning Series. For more information about this series, check your emails for our regular updates, or you can go to hslearningseries.ca. You can also follow us on Twitter with the username @ABHumanServices. We have an exciting panel discussion lined up today where we will address some of the major questions we have heard around working with employers. To help us dive into these topics, we've brought in panelists from 3 different organizations that actively employ persons with disabilities. With the help of our panelists, we are going to take time to explore topics that relate to first contact with employers, best hiring practices, maintaining a positive and inclusive work environment, as well as best practices for overcoming adversity in the workplace. As always, you will be able to pose your questions to our panelists via our live chat window. We will address as many of these questions as we can during the question and answer period. Let's start off today with some introductions. Emilie Kearnan is the Human Resources Manager for the Sawridge Inn in Edmonton. She's very active in the diversity community. Anna Maria Lemaitre is a Special Project Advisor for the HR Diversity Department at Enbridge Pipelines. Christine Clarke is a Human Resources Manager at the Home Depot. And finally, Eric is our online moderator, and he will pose your web chat questions to our guests. Today's session is also being recorded, and the video will be posted on the Alberta Employment First webpage right after the live recording. So let us begin with some introductions. I would like to start off with Emilie Kearnan. As I mentioned, she's the Human Resources Manager at the Sawridge Inn. Tell us a little bit about your role there in human resources, but specifically dealing with persons with disabilities.
Well, on a day-to-day basis, my human resource role is very global, so it includes a lot of recruitment, retention, as well as training. In regards to the disability group, this means making contact with a lot of support organizations, as well as doing checks on a daily basis and seeing how things are going with the employees directly.
How is it different from hiring stereotypical people?
Often it just takes a little bit more attention and a little bit more time to make sure that that person is properly integrated in the job and that the job functions have been modified to accommodate their disability if necessary.
Anna Maria, let's turn to you. How about at Enbridge? What does your role entail there?
I'm a Special Projects Advisor, and I work in HR Diversity and Inclusion. So my role is largely, across the company, I do a lot of work trying to make our company a little bit more diverse and more inclusive. So I work with within the employment equity framework as well. So that's Enbridge is a federally regulated employer, so we do comply with that. And persons with disabilities are a member of the 4 designated groups. They're members of the 4 designated groups. So that's one thing that we do. I also look at setting goals across the company and doing some consultation. We do training, workshops, all sorts of different things actually.
And for you, how does it differ then from hiring, other employees at Enbridge?
Well, we always do our best to accommodate people's individual needs. So people with disabilities in that regard would be no different. We do a few things depending on the disability. So if we're looking to hire somebody with a developmental disability, we'll definitely reach out to our community partners a lot more than we normally would for other jobs. So normally we would post our jobs for a few days on an external website. But we found that that puts people with developmental disabilities at a real disadvantage. So, and people with all sorts of different disabilities too. So if we can work with a service provider to kind of get to know somebody, maybe modify our interview process, modify our hiring process a little bit, that we find is a lot more effective.
And we're going to talk about that a little later in the discussion, so thank you very much for that. And Christine, last but not least, but what are you doing at Home Depot to try to attract persons with disabilities?
So a big part of my role at Home Depot is helping participate, much like Emilie, in the selection and recruitment processes, supporting training. So a lot of it is about looking at Home Depot's core values of building relationships and taking good care of our people by attracting candidates that are going to represent a diverse shopping experience for our customers too. So making sure that there's placement for those folks and that whatever supports they need are there. So that's working with whatever agencies or case managers may be there, coaching leadership on how to best support those associates once they're there, and making sure that I'm doing everything I can to support any ongoing needs that they might have once they join Home Depot.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that information. That's a good introduction. We're going to start with, in the discussion, we're going to start talking about the topic of hiring practices and specifically looking at inclusive hiring practices. So let me begin with you, Anna Maria. How does that specific hiring process work at Enbridge? Can you take us through it step by step?
Sure, I already talked a little bit there in the beginning about what we might do. So specifically with respect to people with developmental disabilities, I'm going to just focus on that here for a minute. We will work with a variety of different agencies across Edmonton and Calgary. Primarily, that's where we've been working the most as of late. And we'll reach out to them and let them know that either we've got a position that we've already created, or that we need some help to create a position that we have in mind, but we maybe just need a little help carving that out. So as I said before, we would normally post all of our positions externally, but in this case, we'll reach out to a couple of different agencies and ask them to give us candidates, people that they think might be a really good fit for both our company and for that role, people that would be really interested in doing that kind of job. And then we'll get those candidates, usually 2 or 3 per agency, and we'll decide generally to interview 5 or 6 of them. From there, we try our best not to cater to any particular disability, but we'll ask the service provider, how can we best meet the needs of that individual through the interview process. So sometimes the person will come right in and we'll just interview them as we normally would, but sometimes what we'll do is maybe give them an extra half hour to look at the questions with their service provider or their guardian, whomever has attended the interview with them, and just give them some time to look it over, think about their answers, maybe put some notes down with their service provider if they want, and then we'll go in and have a conversation with them. We do make sure that everything's in plain language, and we really try to make it more about just getting to know that person and building the relationship early on and seeing how they might fit within our company.
So you're talking about developmental disabilities right there. What
That's
about
right.
other disabilities?
Well, for that, we do have a process internally. So if a person, for example, is having difficulty accessing the website, that could be something. The person can call and get the application in an alternate format, so Braille or however that person would prefer it. We can work through that with them in that way and help them to apply online so they're in our system. And then, again, it's just the same as we would do with anybody else. It's about their individual needs. So if the person needs an interpreter, we would arrange for that with them. If they need any other type of accommodation, maybe if they have a visual impairment or something like that, then we can just work with whatever they need.
And how have you found that these practices have been working for Enbridge?
So far, pretty good. I mean, I'm not going to say we're perfect at it at this point. We're really striving to improve how we meet the needs of people with disabilities and integrate them into our workplace and improve our hiring processes as well. We've got a really great team of business support, HR generalists and business partners who will work with our diversity team, our health recovery team. So we have the advantage of being a really big company with a lot of different resources, and everybody's really committed to making our workplace inclusive. So whatever we can do, we'll modify the process as we need to.
You talked about the importance of service providers. Tell me a little bit more about why that is so important.
They know the individuals a lot more than we do. That's for starters. And they usually have a history with those people. Maybe they've been with them for several years. Maybe they've been in some courses with them, like through Employabilities, for example. They do an employment program for people with developmental disabilities. So if they know them, then we can really get a good idea of what that person needs, what they like. You know, the service providers too are really important for getting to know our company. So a lot of times, I think that is actually very key, because if they come in, they don't know anything about us, then it's not going to be a very successful match, right? There's obviously going to be a different vibe between all of our different companies, right? And we want to just make sure that that person meshes well with our vibe, you know?
Emilie, let's move on to you. How are the hiring practices handled at Sawridge?
Well, definitely before I post any job to the public, I like to reach out to the organizations that I'm working closely with and see if they might have any interested candidates. So normally I'll give them 24, 48 hours and just to let me know if they have anybody who's interested. And definitely then I'll post the job to the public. And I'll make any accommodations necessary to interview the person with either developmental disabilities or physical disabilities.
So what kind of accommodations are you talking about?
It might mean having an interpreter, as Anna Maria mentioned, or providing the opportunity for a counselor to attend as well. Often that happens.
And Anna Maria talked about the importance of service providers and support workers. Why do you think it's important for them to be involved in this process?
Because they know the individual, they have a clear understanding of the person's needs and what we can do as an organization to help them develop their career. So it's very important for us to have an initial contact with the service provider. They also hopefully will be able to give us maybe some tips and tricks of things that haven't worked in the past with other employers, which I find is very important.
Can you give us an example of some tips or tricks?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have successfully integrated quite a few people with both physical and developmental disabilities. And, you know, one of them, I know it was somebody who had a lot of challenge with trust, and the counselor gave us definitely some tips on how we can build trust with this individual, what's important for this person to develop in terms of the aspects of our relationship, how it should look like. And so that was very helpful to us. And now this person's been with us for 3 years, so the relationship's been very successful.
What kind of things do you think that you could continue or maybe add on to the hiring practice that you're doing at Sawridge to improve the situation?
Absolutely. We're actually in the very early stages of, you know, making SOPs around hiring people from underrepresented groups. So definitely things I'd like to see is more involvement from department managers, more education from the service providers in terms of helping us to hire these people on. So I'd like to see more processes around integrating them into our workforce.
There's room to grow then.
Absolutely, always.
Christine, on to you at Home Depot. What could I expect as a person with a disability when I approach Home Depot, or maybe I hear something? What can I expect in the hiring process?
We try to connect with candidates who might be interested in working with Home Depot in a number of ways. So much like the rest of the panel, our positions are posted online so that those that can and do have access to them can see them. We also do a high number of job fairs because we really value the face-to-face contact with what I consider to be my external customers. So that presents some great opportunities for us because often persons with disabilities may attend the job fair because there's a lot of advertising and it generates a lot of excitement around that. So we have the online application and the face-to-face application. We also work to build ongoing relationships with agencies so that we continue to get referrals, whether there's a posting or not, just to see if there's a fit or if there's an anticipated fit for something that might be coming open in multiple locations. We have a diversity and inclusion specialist position, which helps support the entire division in Canada to make sure that we've got associate resource groups that are championing that representation for people who identify with different areas in our community, because we're very, very community grounded and want to have an accurate reflection of what the demographic where our stores are operating, who is in the store. We also plug heavily our internal associate referral program. Our associates are very aware that we're a diverse employer and that we really support having an inclusive environment where, regardless of the contribution, there's a place for everybody there. So oftentimes we will get a lot of great referrals from people who are working there who already know us to be an employer that is very supportive and has a number of benefits in place to help make sure that those folks are successful, and it's not just a handoff from an agency to an employer and then that associate is now left to fend for themselves.
What role do you think that service providers and support workers play in the whole hiring process?
My experience has been they are a very, very valuable asset. They help us get to know that candidate intimately so much faster. They also help provide, much like you said, Emily, insight on things that haven't worked in the past or things that work effectively for them. They also provide a lot of ongoing support from what I've experienced as that person's tenure with Home Depot evolves, because their needs may change over time, and the kinds of resources that they might need might be better identified by that agency and somebody working with them on all those aspects, whereas we're really looking at the work or the employment factor. So it allows us to anticipate what their future needs are going to be better and make sure that the accommodation that they need, if it's there for them, they've got it.
Emily talked a little bit about a success story, and we'll get back to Emily on that in a moment. But how about you? Do you have any success stories that you'd like to share?
I do. At a previous store that I worked with, we had an agency that reached out to us because they had a client that they were interested in having placement. He had both some physical and some mental disabilities that he was working with. They had been working with him for a long time to coach him to be prepared for a work environment. When he came on board, he needed somebody to help facilitate the interview process for him because he's legally blind. And there were some challenges around some of the training for him because of that, but we were able to work around that by having a third party to help facilitate that and just give it to him in a different medium than what typically an associate might experience by doing every thing on the computer. So he came on, he was put in a very front-facing position, greeting associates, so he would be the first person that our customers would see when he came in the door. When he first started working there, he found it very overwhelming because customers would ask him where things were because they couldn't see that he had the physical challenge of the blindness. So they would ask him, and he was constantly being asked for things and he didn't know where they were. So he memorized the store map. And eventually he got to a point where he knows where everything in the store is, and he's never worked in any of those departments. He's been with the company for almost 7 years now. Customers go online and rave about him and how great they think it is that they can come there and they can experience that, and it's a joy for them when they shop. So he's truly representing our brand to everybody who comes in the door. So to me, that's a win-win for everybody.
How wonderful and how impressive
Yeah.
on his part.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even have that memorized, and I've worked there longer than he does.
Well, you've got to catch up now.
He could teach me a thing or two for sure.
Anna Maria, do you have a success story like that or something similar?
I think going back to our employees with developmental disabilities, all of our stories there have been really successful. We now have 6 people with developmental disabilities that work for us in our office towers here in Edmonton and in Calgary, and I think it was a great thing for our culture. It really, I think people may have been a little bit nervous or hesitant. They didn't know what to expect in the beginning. And as soon as they started working for us, people saw how wonderful it was to have these individuals and to have those roles within our company. We have two roles. One is an Oasis coordinator and e-zone concierges. So they go and tidy up our kitchen areas, the boardrooms, copy rooms, they restock things. And in the buildings where we don't have Oasis coordinators, I can say that the staff there are quite jealous. So there's like when are we getting ours? You know,
Envy.
Yeah, some serious envy going on. And I think for them too, the Oasis coordinators and the e-zone concierges, they've changed a lot. I know from when they first started, they were a lot more nervous or anxious, and even some of them have started to open up to me a little bit more. I do the education with them and all of our mandatory training, and they've told me stories about some of the bullying that they faced in high school or some of the bullying they faced in other jobs, and how much they like being in an environment that welcomes them, where they feel really happy to come to work every day, where they feel appreciated. So on both sides, we're really feeling the success of those programs.
That's a very nice story. Very
Thank
nice
you.
to hear. A little bit more about the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so important to include people with disabilities, to enhance your culture?
Well, we do want to be representative of all different people. I mean, we all know somebody with a disability, or we have a disability ourselves, and it's really important that nobody is left out I think that's something that we really value. Respect is one of our main values as well, and people with disabilities deserve respect. Everybody deserves respect, and just because you have a different need doesn't mean that you can't be really valuable and productive in the workplace. You know, just have to change the way we think about things a little bit. And with the OASIS coordinators, it helped us to change the way we think about who can work at a big company like Enbridge.
Sounds like an eye-opening experience.
It was wonderful, and it was like day and night. So,
Emilie, how about you? You talked about a success story. Do you want to continue on with that, or do you have another one you could tell us about?
No, absolutely. What I'd like to continue on with it, because we did face some challenges at one point when we lost contact with this person's counselors, and I think that really highlights the importance that the service providers play in the success of the employee. We'd gone through some staffing changes, and we completely lost contact with the counselor, and we started to notice that we were having some real challenges with the employee. The employee wasn't sure who to trust anymore. The employee didn't know who to go to ask questions to. And so reestablishing that connection with the service provider was paramount in this employee success. And I think it's really important to highlight that, just so that they understand how important it is for them to maintain that contact. And from an employer perspective as well, for us to maintain that contact through staffing changes, it's very important.
It's an ongoing process.
Absolutely, it never stops.
And what do you think a success story like that does for your company?
Well, I really think it elevates our staff. You know, it makes them, I find that their environment is much more inclusive. Everybody feels like it's home, because we all know somebody, as you mentioned, that experiences a developmental disability or a physical disability, either in their family or themselves, and we want them to feel like this is home. For all of our staff, and I really feel that we've established that connection with them. We all feel like a great big family. So.
We're going to talk about first impressions now, initial contact, and how important that can be and how difficult that can be for anyone, the potential employee, but the employer as well. So I want to start with Emilie. We'll go with you again. People are really concerned about this. What do you think is critical in making that first impression for people with disabilities?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I love it when they make an appointment and they pop by to see me. My door's always open as the HR manager there. So I really love having that one-on-one contact. What really doesn't work for me is meeting these people at job fairs. I just don't feel I can give them the attention that they should have in that moment, and often I'll be the only person at the job fair. I'll have hundreds of candidates that are wanting to drop off resumes, and already I have them demanding my attention. And for a service provider to come in, I really would love to have an opportunity to sit down with them, an in-depth discussion of what they can provide, or what their processes are in regards to integrating people into a workforce, and just go through more in detail what they can do.
How can they get prepared for just a consultation and then down the line a job interview with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think having a good idea of what the jobs are that we offer, so maybe checking our website before our appointment to see what jobs are available, what's the typical job look like. So then they might have an idea of who we can integrate. They might already have candidates that they have in mind. So those would be interesting things to talk about.
And how about for the support worker or support organizations? What can they do to help make a good first impression with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely, again, have an idea of the industry standards. I think that would be very important. And success stories, I think I'd love to hear stuff that's worked in the past from them and stuff that also hasn't worked, just so that we don't repeat the same mistakes.
Do you have an example of a good first impression that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, well, with this employment counselor that we at one point lost contact with, she came down to our hotel, reintroduced herself. It was completely out of the blue. She didn't even know who to contact anymore at the Sawridge. So, and just that she took that initiative and reached out to us, because the employee wasn't comfortable at that point speaking with us anymore. So just that she took the initiative to reestablish that connection, and she came by, you know, didn't have an appointment. I really appreciated that. It was important to me that I met her. So,
Anna Maria, how about for you? What are you looking for in a first impression?
Well, I love everything that Emilie just was saying, but to add to that a little bit, I think knowing our company's values, and as you were saying, just knowing the jobs that we have, for us, our values are safety, integrity, and respect. So understanding what that means to you, what that means in your past jobs. I think being interested in the company is really important for us. Being friendly, kind, open to the job that we're hiring for as well. We've had a couple of interesting experiences where somebody's come in, we ask why they wanted that job, and they go, well, I don't really want that job. So that's a funny experience that you can get with service providers at times. And so what I would recommend to service providers too is to get to know us as well. Before you bring in a candidate or ask us maybe to do a job shadowing or job placement or anything like that, come and maybe have coffee at our office, take a look around, get to know the values as well as of the company, and maybe, again, just the type of energy that we have. And it'll give you a better idea for who would be a good fit to work for the company. I imagine, and we were having a little chat before we started here, but I imagine working for the government has a different vibe than the private sector or the RCMP or working in an arts organization. So it depends on, I think it's really important for service providers to show that they know our company and that they've really done their homework to match an individual who wants to work in that environment with our company.
Now, how about overcoming nerves? Because it's nerve-wracking to make that first impression with anyone and for anyone. How do you manage that? What's your advice for people?
Well, nerves are tough. I mean, I had nerves here just starting off, you know, but we don't mind that. If we're interviewing somebody and they seem really nervous, that's okay. We'll have a cup of coffee, we'll have some water, tea, whatever you want, you know. And we'll just have a little chat about anything, the weather, the Oilers.
Maybe not the Oilers.
Maybe not the Oilers. But we'll have a little conversation and just get to know that person a little bit. And I like the advice that I got once, which was, they need you more than you need them. And it's always true. We're really, really looking to find a great candidate. We're not trying to trick people. We're not trying to play games. We just really want to find the best person, and we want to find the best. We want to see who you are as an individual, not who you think we want you to be. So just be yourself.
And particularly for people with disabilities, that might be hard to express right off the top because there might be some insecurities about being themselves. But you're saying you really want to know.
Oh, yeah. What do you like? I know we often ask that. What are your hobbies? You know, you might want to, reading about pipelines. Okay, that's an interesting hobby. If it is your hobby, go for it. I'd love to hear about that. But if you're interested in soccer, or if you participate in the Special Olympics, or if you're into some of the self-advocacy groups out there, I find that really, really interesting. And I know that our people leaders find that interesting too, to find out how you are a leader in your own communities and what activities you like to do, and who are your support systems out there, and what is it that you like to do.
When someone has a unique disability, what's the information that you'd like to hear about right off the bat?
You know, to be honest, unless it's really obvious, we don't know the diagnosis that people have. We don't know what their disabilities are. We may know a broad, you know, it's obvious if somebody is deaf or if they're blind, then that's going to be obvious, and we're going to accommodate that, obviously. If the person has a developmental disability, we don't necessarily need to know what it is. We just need to know how you are your best self in the workplace. So if that means I just need you to remind me of things a little more frequently, or I need to be around people, I need to talk more, I need one-on-one information, or some people prefer you know, to take their training online. Whatever it is, and whatever is going to make you the most comfortable, that's what we want to know. How do we make you successful?
That's helpful information for you.
Yes.
Christine, how about at the Home Depot? What are you looking for then when someone comes in and is trying their best to make a good impression for you?
General, natural, overall customer service orientation is pretty important to us, no matter what the role in the organization, because we all have a customer that we're serving. So that natural inclination to want to be helpful. However it is that they achieve success, it's going to look different for every associate just because our workforce is so diverse. We don't have associates who have identical education or work background or trade experience or home renovation experience or gender or age or ability. So really looking at how they fit our customer service model, because ultimately for it to be mutually beneficial, that's got to be a connection that we make. And then looking from there, what do we need to accommodate specifically based on this person's needs? A lot of our business focus for our customers that are shopping is how do we help them solve what they came in for? So I look at someone who's applying and how do we solve the challenge of you getting a job with us if that's what they really want. Much like you, Anna Maria, I want to know why they want to come work for Home Depot, what it is about us that they feel is going to make them a good fit there. I'm not so concerned about the logistics of how we help them put those pieces together, because I'm so confident that we have so many resources within the leadership team and different leaders in the training programs, in the associates themselves, because we do have a new associate coach program where we buddy a new hired associate with another associate who's been specifically trained to help support them because they're new. And taking a look at what they need. So they're going to be helping support their training on an ongoing basis, probably for at least the first 90 days that they're with us anyway. So I'm confident on that piece. We've got a lot to offer them to make that transition smooth once they come on board. But finding the right fit for a customer service environment is a very, very specific trait or skill set. Sometimes that environment can be very overwhelming for people depending on the disability that they have, because customers aren't always as forgiving as the other folks wearing the aprons are. So making sure that we have a chance to do a face-to-face is very important. Often having a very good relationship with the organization that they may be working with or a case manager is also really important, just because we really want to make sure. My worst fear would be that it would be a negative work experience for someone to come and be with Home Depot. So I want to make sure before we enter down to that road that the environment we have to offer based on the demands of the job are actually going to be comfortable for that person. If they're not, then are there tasking roles that are less customer facing that might be a better fit for them, but exploring all of those options, not necessarily what they may associate with a typical Home Depot associate doing.
Now, I asked Emilie about what kind of information you do want right off the bat. What kind of information don't you want?
The kind of information that we don't want from people are things that have no bearing at all on effectiveness to do the job, because I think that clouds what the needs of the individual actually are. Our focus for them is helping them be the best that they can possibly be and as successful as they possibly can with Home Depot when they're working with us. So that's where I really want to put the emphasis. To be truthful, they are associates that need a different kind of support. So I'd have to be honest in saying that when I look at building a relationship with that associate, I'm probably going an extra distance and on a bit more of a personal scale to try and get to know them, because there is a trust level there. They can be more vulnerable in terms of being new to the workforce, not knowing everything, and then also coming to the table with maybe having to do things differently. So you have to work harder, I think, to show them that this is an inclusive environment, and despite those differences, that doesn't mean you don't belong here. It just means that you're adding to the ways that we're different, which we believe are one of the things that makes us stand out, makes us great.
What do you do specifically to make the individual with a disability feel more at ease, more welcome?
Well, there's the new associate coach program, so we connect that new hire within their first 2 shifts with that individual. And I also make sure when we first start scheduling them that there's an incredible amount of overlap for them with that person, so they're going to see them a lot frequently. That person's going to be checking in with them. They're going to be asking them things. We also work to make sure we're introducing them to as many people as we possibly can, so that they have friends in the field. You know, there are other people that they can go to if they need help, and they don't have to worry about whether or not they know them. They've already met them. having associates' names on their aprons really helps those folks because it's easier to sort of break the ice and introduce yourself and make that contact. We also try to look for opportunities where we can hire peer groups for some of these associates, so they feel a sense of association within their own culture, within their own store, wherever possible. So I've had success with hiring more than one individual who's come to us as a referral through the same agency. So they're working with people that they've actually done other things with through the agency. So they have a bit of a social network at work too, right? So there's a retention piece there. They feel even more included. There are other fringe benefits to coming and working there. They have fun at work and they like the people they work with because they know some of them already. So,
what about for that first initial contact when you're meeting someone? How do you make them relax and really tell the true story of themselves?
We're a very people-oriented business, so there's an incredible amount of training to help support making customers feel comfortable in talking to you about their project. It's really the same sort of thought process when it comes to talking to a candidate. I'll usually start initiating the talking and try and ask them open-ended questions that give them an opportunity to tell me a little bit more about themselves, and I'll do it a bit on a personal scale so that hopefully they're talking about things that they're really comfortable about or maybe even proud about that don't necessarily have to do with home renovation or working in a Home Depot, but just allows them to sort of show me their ability to shine.
Just make them relax and feel comfortable with you.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, that's really all very good information from all three of you. We're going to move on now to talking about, we did talk a little bit about this, we touched on it, but having a unique culture, mission, and staff, which can contribute to a unique work environment. And each one of you has very different work environments, so we can speak to that. So, Anna Maria, let's begin with you. Does Enbridge have any unique practices or tools that foster a diverse and inclusive work environment? Give me some more examples, because I know you've already touched on it, but let's expand on that a bit.
Well, more broadly, we do have a senior manager of enterprise-wide diversity and inclusion, and we also have an executive diversity and inclusion steering committee. So right off the top, our leaders are very engaged in making our workplace more diverse and more inclusive, and it is a priority. So you can really feel that from the messaging that we get from our leaders, from things that are on our internal website. We know that it's important. We have several committees as well for people to participate in. We have affinity groups called employee resource groups. So we have those for a variety of different groups. For people with disabilities, we don't have one, but we have a community of practice. So there are various folks within our company who maybe have a bigger impact on how inclusive we are to people with disabilities. And we've invited all of them to get together and brainstorm how we can be even more inclusive. We had a great instructor come in, and we asked him to come and do some additional consulting with us after the fact. And one of the tips that he gave us was to look at making people with disabilities feel that they are of our workplace community, not just in it, so that they participate just as much as anybody else would, that they're getting everything out of our workplace that they can. So that community of practice, I think, is something that we want to keep going with, and we hope that it'll help us to develop our employees as much as we can, and to improve our processes even more.
How about fellow employees? How do they play a role?
Oh,
in
yeah. Well,
this?
for people with developmental disabilities, they go through all of the different floors throughout the building. So we have contacts for them on each floor. So it's somebody that if they have questions, or maybe they need some help, they will go to that person. And there's usually a backup person as well that will be there to help them if they need it. And we do have as well, just safety monitors on each floor and things like that. But we have a few additional supports for people with developmental disabilities. So we get a ton of email. I'm sure everybody does, right? So once a week, somebody comes and meets with them and answers all their questions and helps them to go through the email and make sure that they've gotten the messages. So that we have, tons and tons of events, different volunteer opportunities and safety meetings. We just want to make sure that they've understood what's going on and that they can participate if they want to, right? So lots of social activities too.
And that's a big part of work, isn't it? Especially nowadays, really trying to get people to connect on a social level, not just at a work level.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because we tend to work in silos, right? Or you can really get isolated within your workplace. And if you have employee resource groups, or the OASIS coordinators are really lucky because they get to meet everybody in the company, right? But when you're in a resource group with people from all different levels, different regions, different buildings, you get to know people, you get to know more about your company, more about your job. It's really beneficial, actually.
Emilie, what are some of the barriers to inclusive hiring practices and keeping people there?
Yeah, well, I definitely think with us being a smaller organization, we are quite small compared to Enbridge and Home Depot. It has definitely been having a proper grasp on that person's disabilities and any accommodations that we should be making. In the past, I think we tended to hire these people and then not necessarily make any accommodations right off the bat, and those things became challenges. And so it's basically having a proper grasp on the accommodations that we should be making, I think has, helped us a lot, so.
And Christine, what do you see as some barriers at Home Depot?
There's a lot of things that we're able to work around and remove what otherwise could be barriers. The one that is a little bit more challenging for us are safety factors. There is a pretty realistic safety consideration in our Home Depot stores. So, for example, every associate, myself included, wears safety footwear every day at work. And I have had associates in the past who've been persons with disabilities that had difficulty finding safety footwear that met our safety requirement needs, but that they physically could wear. So, I know in that situation, I worked very closely with the parent, actually, of that associate. We ended up finding a service provider out of Calgary and had a pair sent up and shipped up for him just to make sure. But realistically, for an associate to work there, they're going to be stringent safety practices and procedures. Getting them trained on those, we can work definitely, absolutely with an associate for that. Depending on the disability that the associate has, there may be jobs that we'd be putting them at risk if we put them into that job, that we may not have the ability to alter or accommodate all the aspects of that job. So that's one consideration that I know that I look at, and that's why having the relationship with the agency or somebody advocating for the candidate is so important, because I want to be very, very transparent with the things that this associate might be asked to do or need to do, and is that realistic for this person, and how would that look for them, because taking good care of our people is one of our core values as well. So it's very important to me that whatever they need, we can do for them, but the safety is a big factor.
And how does Home Depot foster that inclusive environment?
Much like Anna Maria, we have associate resources groups. We have POP, or Power of Possibilities, and Orange Ability, which is a newer associate resource group. We have others that target different aspects of diversity for our associates, so that there's a sense of network and connectiveness. Also, that membership or that alliance within an organization, where when there's so much diversity, it is nice to connect with people who represent some things that you can identify with. We also try and work to have different options to connect with people on a social scale, because we do recognize that really aids in the building relationship piece and the teamwork in the store. So we have something called Warehouse, which is kind of like Facebook for Home Depot.
That's interesting.
It's just a fabulous program. So, much like Facebook, an associate would have a profile, and they can connect and they can talk with other associates. They can join groups and get a live feed. You can follow people like you do on Twitter or Instagram, and you can get information from across. So for those associate resource groups, you can, an associate here for me in Alberta who's a member of Orange Ability can connect with an associate in Nova Scotia, and they can talk, and there's an inbox, and they can message each other, so they can start to network amongst themselves too. So they could take a lot of ownership over the relationships that they're building. But looking for fun, interesting ways for people to try and connect, and associates can get access to that even when they're not at work through the internet. So just looking at some out-of-the-box ways.
Yeah, what a great way to learn more about the people you work with, even if they're not in the same building as you, and just learn about the country too, right? I mean, that's fabulous. What a great idea. How about Emilie, because your organization is, of course, much smaller, it must be more like a family there, am I correct?
Absolutely. That's definitely exactly what it's like. We fight like a family and we make up like a family. But yeah, 100%. And I think for us, it's definitely, we don't have any platforms where people can go meet online, but we do have a lot of internal events where we organize for staff to get together. Just this afternoon we're having our spring cleanup day, so we got all the staff to come in and volunteer some of their time and help us clean up our beautiful property. And just doing things like that just helps people connect and get to know each other.
And how about the support workers and organizations? How can they help foster inclusivity at your workplace?
Absolutely. I think in the past I've had them come in and give us tips and tools on how to help us develop relationships between colleagues, and that's been really helpful for us. They'll even sometimes spend half a day or with the person with the disability to get an idea of what their day-to-day things are and give us some tips and tools on how we might help that person and stuff like that. And I find that's really helped us.
Anna Maria, how about you?
For the service providers in particular? Is that
Yes,
what you're asking?
yeah. How can they help Enbridge?
The first couple weeks to maybe a couple months is so key to a person really feeling integrated, I think, within the culture. And so onboarding is really important to us, and I think that's where the service providers can play a really key role in the beginning. Like you were saying too about the way you do training, in-person training can be really important depending on the disability, and again, specifically to developmental disabilities. We've adapted all of our mandatory training so that it's delivered in person, including that first week. So they get all the onboarding in person. And what I think is really interesting there too is we recognize some of the barriers and gaps that they may have had in their employment history, right? So some of them have, maybe this is their first job, or they've worked in a completely different environment like food service industry or something like that. So they're not really familiar with office culture. So you need to kind of get up to speed on things like, well, you don't have to punch in, you don't have to ask to use the washroom. There's different rules, right? So the service providers being there, being present, helping us to deliver that training in a way that is meeting their needs, that's really beneficial. And then helping that individual coming in either once a day, once a week, whatever that person needs, and making sure that they understand all that we covered, that they're comfortable with their job, that they're safe, that they're having a good time, that they like it. That's really important. And then another thing that we have discovered is service providers, they can be seen as the police, if you will, the bad guys sometimes. But if you only call them when something is maybe not going right, and it's not that things are going wrong, but you're facing a situation and you don't know exactly how to accommodate that person. So you call the service provider and they come in, and I think it automatically will create a little anxiety for the individual. So I think one of the other things that service providers can do is just come for fun. Come more frequently, have meetings with us, come once a quarter, every couple months, and have coffee, have lunch with us, just do a round and tell the person what a great job they're doing, and then go and have no criticism to give whatsoever. That is so important, because at the end of the day, that relationship is what's going to create the trust that we're looking for to create the inclusive culture that we want.
What kind of positive aspects do you see when a person with a disability in particular gets positive feedback and is acknowledged?
Well, like anybody, you like to hear nice things about yourself. You like to hear that you're doing a good job, that you're not screwing up, that you're valued, right? Everybody wants to hear positive things. And I think paying attention to not just the things that you've done specifically about your job, like, oh, good job doing that report, Anna Maria, but you want to hear the things like, you know what, you're a great mentor to your colleagues, or you're a really good leader, and I know that that's some of the feedback that that our employees have really valued to hear. You know, your colleagues love working with you. That's positive.
All right. Having support workers or service providers obviously plays an important role, as we've been talking about setting up a more inclusive work environment for staff. Let's touch a little bit more on the importance of that and what would happen if you didn't have their support. Can we start with you, Christine?
I think the potential for that to be not nearly as successful a venture for an associate in our case would definitely be there. I know my usual process when we have a person with disabilities is I'll do a weekly follow-up on the phone with the case manager after they've joined us, just to make sure, because it is a very fast-paced environment, and usually people figure out quite quickly, yes, this is an environment I can thrive in, or no, I think I'm going to be overwhelmed here. So it's important to me that we have a touch point right away if something's too much or it's not enough challenge for that person. So I'll have that weekly one-on-one, and then a monthly face-to-face where we can sit down and involve their client, our associate, so that they have an opportunity to hear me tell them what a great job they're doing here, all the successes that they've had, where they're developing, but also to ask questions, and that person also has their agency or their advocate representative there to demonstrate what it is they need from me, and they can take ownership over their employment. Like, the goal for me is to try and help support somebody to be as independent and as successful as they can, so that they see they function just like every other associate here. That's so important for them to see themselves capable that way. But if we didn't have that ongoing connection, I would worry for that associate that their needs would be overlooked, or their questions might not be answered, or the help or the support that might really make a difference for them would never get to them.
What are your thoughts about what Anna Maria brought up about having the support worker or organization pop in every once in a while when things are just going great?
I think that's fabulous. That success story that I gave you earlier, that's exactly what his caseworker would do. Sometimes I'd just be walking down the floor and I'd look over and I'd say, oh, he's here today. So then I'd pop over and say hi. And he was really just popping in for about 15, 20 minutes, hanging out with him, observing him doing his job, asking him how it's going, talking to me, visiting with other people. And it made it much less formal too, so that it was all sort of each of us having relationships, and they weren't all separately funneled, so this associate didn't have to feel stressed because their worker was here and they're getting together with the managers here. I wonder what they're talking about. It was more just a very routine thing. I think it really reaffirmed for the caseworker that the things they were hearing from me and the things they were hearing from the associate, absolutely true, because I'm seeing him really doing a fantastic job here. So that would be a very, very common thing. And that was also reassuring to me, because that particular associate some days would struggle, you know, like any of us, has good days, has not so good days. So if it's a not so good day, that's great. He's got some extra resources and some extra support that's there for him. So if that's a day he happens to need it, then there's just somebody else there to help him, not just us. So I think as much as you can do that way to reinforce that consistently for those associates.
And that popping in doesn't take a lot of time, but can have some big payoff.
Well, and in a retail environment, you can do that, and it doesn't appear awkward because there's lots of people there. So
Absolutely.
An office environment, it would be different for sure.
How about for you, Emily? Would you value that?
Oh, absolutely. I love it when they pop by just to see us kind of out of the blue, unscheduled. And I think it's really great for the employees to see that too. I really think it helps foster trust, like you guys mentioned before. And we kind of use that as a springboard to foster trust between us and the individual at that moment. So it's great.
It's like a ribbon that kind of, you know, blends you guys all together and makes you one, right? And just makes you stronger. One thing that we haven't talked about, but I was thinking about it when I was talking to Anna Maria earlier, is just about what a service provider or an assistant can do, just about like the clothing and the type of things, because it's different at Home Depot, to Enbridge. And Emily, let's start with you. just we have to do this very quickly because we have some questions here, but I'd like to touch on that just briefly.
So you mean in terms of dress codes and stuff?
Yeah, that could help make the potential employee feel good first at contact and then down the line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, depending for what job that the person's coming in for, definitely would be important in terms of a first impression to, you know, look their best. And I think if the service provider can help with that, that's ideal.
Okay, we've run out of time, unfortunately, so we're going to get right to the question and answer period. We've got some questions that we're going to take from the audience. So, Eric, what is the first question?
Yeah, this first question is for Christine, and the question is, can you talk a little bit about the range of positions that Home Depot fills with persons with disabilities?
There really is no limit to the options. In any given store, there's a number of positions. We typically tend to look at positions as being either customer facing or being tasking. So they're dealing primarily with product or they're dealing primarily with a customer. So we have sales associates, we have lot associates, we have cashiers, we have operational pack-down associates, receiving associates. Sales associates can work in a number of different departments, so depending on the skill set. So there's a very, very wide range. The nice thing about having access to the online system, so if somebody has somebody working with them, I strongly suggest that a case manager would go and take a look at that, because it very specifically breaks down what is the day-to-day activity level going to look like for somebody doing that job, what are some of the physical demands of those positions to see if their client's going to be compatible. And it will give the candidate a better idea if what they'd be asked to do would fit within what they're comfortable doing and the skill set that they've got.
Eric?
Yeah, our next question is for Emilie, and the question is, does the Saw Ridge Inn create specific jobs for persons with disabilities with specific disabilities?
I wouldn't say we create specific jobs, but we definitely make changes and accommodations in regards to a job to accommodate a person who is very interested and has shown a genuine interest in serving our guests.
This next question is for Anna Maria and Christine. Do all your locations have the same program in place for diverse employment province-wide?
Anna Maria, let's start with you.
Yes.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, we all across Alberta, all across Canada, U.S., our diversity and inclusion practices are enterprise-wide.
Christine?
It would be the same for us. Our core values are reflective of everybody, all 28,000 people that are working for Home Depot. So they wouldn't find a Home Depot that isn't living that same core value. The associate resource groups are meant and intended for every associate within Home Depot. So yeah, that would be across the board.
Are there certain areas of the country that are doing better than others?
I don't know if I'd say they're doing better. I think you'll find that there's definitely pockets of concentration. So you'll find that certain parts of the country may experience a higher volume of people that identify with one associate resource group over another.
I bet yours is doing the best, right?
Well, we like to think so in Alberta.
I was opening the door for you, Christine. And Anna Maria just wanted to walk through it, right? How about at Enbridge?
Yeah, our team is the best.
Yes, okay, good. And Emily's smiling too.
Absolutely, the Edmonton team is the best.
All right, Eric, another question?
Yeah, the next question is for everyone, and it is, how do you engage your people leaders in the process of recruitment and employment?
Emilie, why don't we begin with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Involving them in the interview process right from the beginning, even before the interview, getting a really good idea of what their needs are from the department head, and then involving them in the process from the beginning. So selecting resumes, interviewing candidates, letting them ask the job-specific questions, just to create that relationship really early on.
Anna Maria?
Yeah, that's a great point too. And awareness, I guess we do some enterprise-wide awareness. We have a few diversity and inclusion videos, and 2 of them focus on people with disabilities. One is about an employee we have who is deaf and how his interpreter helps throughout meetings and training sessions, how they use technology to communicate. And then we have another video that shows our OASIS coordinators at work and interviews the people that they work with. So having that awareness is really good, and then we feel that we are getting people approaching us and saying, we're interested in having a program like that. And so we try to work with those managers, those people leaders who really want to go out there and work with those communities.
Who are stepping up instead
Yeah.
of being asked to step up.
Exactly. And we have people from all levels. So we have supervisors, managers, and we have people at the VP level saying, okay, I want this program where I work too, so help us out.
And Christine, how about you?
Much like Emily, our leaders are fully engaged in the recruitment process, so they'll be participating in screening. They help at hiring events and the selection of candidates that we schedule for interviews. They themselves are the hiring manager doing the interviews, so they're completely empowered to be choosing their people and who's working with them. Every Home Depot associate receives an incredible amount of training on the concepts around diversity and inclusion and what that looks like, because each work environment is different. So taking a look at how, as an associate, they're going to contribute to helping maintain and also foster continuing to increase the diversity in our workforces where our Home Depots are operating. So it's, we have 8 core values. It's one of our core values. So it's just as important as creating shareholder value or entrepreneurial spirit, So that part of our business and our people is something that's ingrained throughout the entire organization. So it's important that we're providing them with the training to give them the knowledge level to be able to actually help create that environment. So we're not just talking about it, but it's real.
Is that training ongoing?
It usually happens at the beginning when someone joins us, and then they have subsequent training that they'll receive following, specific for leadership.
Eric, do you have another question?
Yeah, we have time for one last question, and this one's a bit more specific. The question is, we have the support employment staff train along with adults who have intellectual disabilities, so they're with them assisting during the training. Is this something that is welcome in your associations?
Anna Maria?
Yes, I mean, we definitely welcome the support in our companies. And I know there's one thing we haven't touched upon, and I just wanted to bring it in one more time. Families too. Sometimes if the person isn't with an organization, a family member can come, and that's fine. And even if a family member isn't there, those service providers will work a lot with family members or guardians to help us to make sure that that person gets what they need, and that the guardians and the family have all the information they need as well.
How about you, Christine?
Very, very welcome. It's a situation that's happened for me in the past. Oftentimes, initially anyway, there may be a stronger comfort level for that associate to be working to have that person there. A lot of our training is set up in a way that wouldn't be problematic at all.
Emily?
I also echo my colleagues. They would be more than welcome, yes.
Good information, ladies. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. Thank you to our guests for generously sharing your experience and insights with us, and to all of you who tuned into this session. We're grateful you spent the hour with us and that you found the conversation informative and helpful. Next month, we will continue our webcast series with a broadcast of Rich Donovan's keynote speech from this year's CASE conference, entitled Return on Disability. As we mentioned in the opening, this webcast is part of the Government of Alberta's Human Services Learning Series, which will be running around the same time each month for the beginning of 2016. This series covers topics from Employment First, like the one you saw today, but also has series developed on fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD, the Alberta Brain Injury Initiative, ABII, and the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. To get updates and registration information about each of these sessions, please email us at hs.employmentfirst@gov.ab.ca and ask to be added to our mailing list. As mentioned, today's webcast was recorded and the video will be posted online, along with videos from all the previous webcasts. The video link will be sent out to all registrants in the near future. We encourage you to share that video with anyone you think may be interested. And of course, if you have feedback about today's webcast, please email us at hs.employmentfirst@gov.ab.ca and let us know. We would love to hear your ideas. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we will see you next month.